Hey, hey, B-siders. Welcome to a brand new episode of my Living on a B-side podcast. Super excited you're here, and I'm so ready to dive into another interview with a wonderful guest and talk all things music, how that has impacted their life, and what they're doing now with it. And yeah, I can't wait for you to hear it because it's going to be amazing. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you. Oh, and I'm just sort of like, oh, my brain just went freeze. It's Elisa. Here we go. I think I got it right, didn't I?
Yes, you
welcome,
got
welcome.
it. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on. I'm so happy you're here.
Glad to be here with you.
Wonderful. And for those of you wondering, even though it sounds like a very sort of European name, we're actually, on the other side of the world. I'm in Australia and you are in the United
I'm in
States,
the
aren't you?
US. Yep, that's right. Yep,
Exactly. So there's a bit of a European flavor in the middle somewhere.
that's right. We meet in the middle.
We meet in the middle, exactly. Now, just to give you a very quick idea who she is and what she does in her life, I'll just gonna introduce you quickly, and then you, Elisa, can probably add a little bit onto that because I'm sure there's a few things that you might want to just expand a little bit. Right. So, this is an interesting list of things you do. You are a song leader, a retreat facilitator, a composer, and a singer. Which obviously includes songwriting and recording your own music. Oh my God, I've got to read this out because obviously, it's I want to get it right. You are a MA transpersonal psychology, creativity, and innovation specialist. Now that you got to explain a little bit more what that is. And a BA music education and vocal performer, excuse me, as well. And you are the founder of Freeing Your Voice. I mean, there's obviously a little bit more that you do, but I think that's kind of the umbrella bit, which then expands a lot more. So I'll hand it over to you quickly to let us know a little bit more about all that you do and who you are.
Yeah, so my primary work right now is retreat facilitation, and I lead a course in personal and spiritual growth at Light on the Hill Retreat Center, which is in upstate New York within the USA. And I've been working out there for over a decade, but I've been going to that retreat center for about 20 years for my own deep soul searching process. And so just attending retreats there helped me clear the way for my career path.
Wow, wonderful. Again, connection and community obviously seems to be the key to more growth, isn't it? That's what I feel like.
That's that's right. That's right. I'll share a little bit about the transpersonal psychology piece.
Yes, please.
Yep. So my undergraduate degrees were in music education and vocal performance, to my
Mm.
surprise, because when I was younger, I was too shy to sing in front of people, but it was my primary passion. So I learned to get out of the way and let my voice come through. And then I also felt a calling toward healing work. And I think it's more like healing of the soul as opposed to going into a medical field. So I went through this program that I now teach at Hidden Treasure and found that I really resonated with the psychological and spiritual teachings of the program in terms of how do we clear our inner obstacles so that we can connect with our deepest purpose and joys in life. And I really was very fascinated by that process and how it worked within me. And then I was interested in helping others discover how to clear the way within themselves. And so I later earned a degree in transpersonal psychology, which one could think of as psychology and spirituality together, like meditation practices to help with overall well being. But I also think of transpersonal psychology as the study of what makes people thrive. So
Mm.
instead of studying abnormal psychology and the mental illnesses, we studied what makes people thrive. And there were two key areas that we focused on: creative expression and experiences in nature and also meditation practices. But there's something about that combination that really worked well for me. And so that's what I often teach about.
Wonderful. I, yeah, that's, and I feel that's something that really comes up more and more. This acknowledging that obviously mental health is a big thing, especially right now. However, how can we support people? How can we combat that without the need to go on medication? Or, obviously there are points where you need that, no doubt about it, but just like from a from a just a 9 to 5 everyday type of person who hasn't been diagnosed with any severe or whatever mental illness, how can we really become happier and content with who we are? So I love that more and more people like yourself are actually popping up to highlight there is a way to do that, and it doesn't involve taking chemicals or anything like that. That's
That's
absolutely what I love.
that's right. I sometimes think about giving meditation prescriptions instead of
Yes.
medication prescriptions, and that's what I can do, assess where somebody is in their life or their spiritual journey and give a practice that might help move them along.
Mm, yes. I really love that. That's yeah. And it's like you said, it's I hear it more and more. Obviously, I'm involving myself a little bit more in that space right now, coming from the music angle, obviously, but there's so much more, even for those people who are not so into music, they're finding meditation, they're finding nature, and then they will automatically be drawn to sound, to music. So I feel like you guys who do what you do are like the forerunners, and like, of something amazing that's going to happen, because I can't see us going down the road of constantly medication all the time. That's just not
That's right.
how it should go. Is that how you see it as well?
Yes, I think that, as you mentioned, in some cases, people really need that support
Mm.
of, an actual medication.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a fan of let's try the natural remedies first and see if there's a combination that can work for somebody, such
Mm-hmm.
as, the basics like the exercise and healthy diet and making sure you have a supportive community around you. And for me, I would say I consider song to be medicinal. And when I look up the word medicine, it's connected to the word healing or a cure. And so I
Mm-hmm.
talk a lot about song as medicine, especially in my freeing your voice retreats and workshops. That's a primary belief I carry. And it's been true for me. So I teach on the things that have really worked for myself, and I practice on myself too.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. Wow. Thanks for explaining a bit more what you've studied and how you now apply that in what you do every day, which leads us obviously into, we talked about music and songs and how that can be medicine. And it's a bit of a silly question actually to ask, but I will still ask it. Music, how important is it to you? And when did you discover that it was so important to you that you want to take that route down where you are now?
I would say that music is my primary source of joy. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I just noticed. It's my go-to. I notice that if I'm going through something, I want to sing about it. If I'm happy about something, I want to sing about it. And so it's just meets it all at all ends. And so when I was young, I had two aunts that were music teachers. And so music was just in our family. My parents both sang in the church choir before I was born. And every week they'd go out on their to their rehearsals, and music was part of my upbringing, just at family gatherings and in the church, and it was just always around. But I did go through a phase where I was just feeling very introverted and too afraid to actually share my solo voice with anybody. So I thought of myself as a closet singer. And after school, I was a latchkey kid, which, if that is a term people understand, my parents worked. So starting from the age 9 or 10 years old, I would come home to an empty house and I'd let myself in. So I had my own
Right.
key and I would go inside. And to keep myself company, I would play the piano and learn my favorite songs and show tunes from musicals. And
Mm.
so after school, when the house was empty, and only when the house was empty, I would sing and teach myself piano parts. And that was, I didn't realize it at the time, but that was my natural therapy. That was my way of processing what had happened during the day. And so, from years of doing that by myself, I'd wait till somebody left the house and I'd peer out the curtains. Are they coming home yet? I pretend I was just watching television instead. I didn't want them to know I was doing this. But I would imagine that I was brave enough to have an audience.
Hmm.
Imagine that maybe, oh, I would play and I'd pretend that there was an audience, or I would stand up on the hardwood floor and pretend it was a stage. And I would hope that I would have the courage one day to sing in front of people. And little by little, the shell cracked open with
Hmm.
support of other people. And I'm really glad it did because it's something I still am a performing singer and I write songs for a band and I also write the songs for my workshops and retreats. And so it's an enormous part of my life.
Oh, that's so. I think a lot of people can probably relate to the bit where when you're alone, you either take a hairbrush or you take a broomstick, and if you haven't got a piano at home, so yeah, a lot of people can relate. But then having that guts and that actually getting to the point where you do it, I think that's where a lot of people kind of fall off the cliff. So kudos to you for actually getting there and doing it.
Well,
So,
thank you. I think it just the right people at the right time happened to hear me and nudge a little bit in the right
mm,
amount. And I
mm-hmm,
also think that, I reached a point in my teenage years where I was really quite unhappy. Like I felt like I was holding myself, I was oppressing myself.
mm-hmm,
And part of that had to do with like not having the courage to share my voice. And I realized that I just couldn't stand that feeling anymore of that self oppression and
mm-hmm.
keeping myself so bottled in. And I did start to feel a lot better when I finally had the courage to clear the way.
Wow. And that was happening when you were like a teenager that time?
Yep, like the 15 years old was that
Mm-hmm.
key moment where it was like I either just stay in my box and be miserable or I find courage somehow. And I remember giving myself a pep talk one summer when we were on a school break. And I just thought, I said, Elisa, you need to become more assertive. And I talked myself through like what, being more assertive
Yep.
would look like. And I think that it was a turning point for me. I knew that I needed to try a new way of being. And it carried me through as soon as I finally did have the courage to sing in front of others and audition for things. And then I
Mm-hmm.
found I was accepted. And, um,
Wow.
as soon as that happened, door after door began to open. Like I
Mm.
would get accepted into this musical or that play or that
Mm.
ensemble or asked to do like a solo for something. And it just like one thing, just it was like a doorway led to a doorway led to a doorway until I was at music school, auditioning to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and even then, I thought I would only do music education and I'd just be a music teacher. But at my audition, the panel that was listening to me encouraged me to take on a vocal performance degree as well, which trains people to be performing singers. And I hadn't considered that. I didn't think I would
Mm.
be like on the level that I need to be. But they
Mm-hmm.
said, hey, there's a way to do both. You can learn to be a teacher of music and a performer. And they gave me the nudge. And so it's just interesting when you realize other people have faith in you, even when you're not quite sure of yourself. And those, helping hands came at the right moments.
I so love that. I love when things align for someone and then things really start to take off. That's oh,
It's something we
wonderful.
just have to give thanks for, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. True.
And if there's bumps on the way, there were times I didn't get accepted into things and it's
Mm-hmm.
heartbreaking and you feel not good enough and you struggle. And there were times I questioned, should I just let this all go? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and and I think that was important. It's kind of like soul searching. I think that's
Mm.
natural and important that we do have phases where we do ask ourselves the deeper and harder questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this still right for me? Is this
Mm.
actually the path for me to
Yeah.
be on? And I would often meditate on why do we sing? Why do I sing? What's the purpose for this? And
Right.
I think there's something healing for people around, having the courage to be seen and heard. I
Mm,
think there is something healing about that, but
mm,
at a certain point for me, it needed to go beyond even like that personal
mm-hmm,
point. I felt, um, for me, it started to become about being a conduit for a higher energy, a higher frequency. And maybe I'd fill my songs with the intention of healing or of love or compassion or hope, and just realizing that I could be a conduit for like a higher vibrational energy that might really uplift a room or,
mm-hmm,
um, yeah. And I would meditate on why do we sing collectively?
mm-hmm.
And each time I've done that, I've come up with two words, and we sing for healing and we sing for joy. And that just feels so true. I think there's other things too, like unity and connection, and those are very important right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we sing for healing and we sing for joy, and that feels very true on a core level for me.
Mm. Yes. Yeah, while you were explaining all that, I was sort of thinking back to the time when I was younger, quite a bit younger. And I was taking singing lessons back then with my cousin. Did it together because we weren't brave enough to do it on our own. And I remember walking out of the singing lessons with her, and we both looked at each other and went, whew. I think if you've never had singing lessons before, it's really hard to explain the feeling you get when you start to discover your own voice and what it's capable of. I remember having this feeling of, it's really hard to describe, but like confidence, and you feel like you're sort of going like this. You really open up, and
Yes.
it's it's kind of this confidence comes in, and you're like, yes, it's kind of this strength. It's really bizarre. Just by taking singing lessons, it's all this other stuff comes up. So when you describe that, I'm like, yeah, I think to a certain level I can relate. So
That's right. And it all comes down, I think, to a good teacher.
mm,
Ultimately having somebody that, gives you enough positive reinforcement to help you have the courage. And then I think it's nice to receive some tips to improve. And I taught voice lessons for 18 years before I
wow.
moved more fully into retreat facilitation work.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with teenagers and adults and found exactly what you described, that so many people came in and what we were actually working on was their confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And their voice was already there. So many people came in with a beautiful voice,
Mm-hmm.
but I could hear how they were kind of restricting it physically.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that it had to do more with an emotional state of like fear, that
Mm-hmm.
is it okay to let this out? And so just with the right tips and encouragement, people really would blossom open. And that was
Mm-hmm.
beautiful to see, just steady calmness, patience, and just like seeing where people are and giving just the right amount of something and then a little tip to improve. But I always found that it was important to start with a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what you're doing really well, and here's what we can work on. And I had teachers who didn't do that. I had
Ooh.
teachers in college who were just like, I would take a breath and go to sing, and they'd say, nope, it's wrong, before I would even make a sound sometimes. Like something in the way that I took my breath was wrong. And they just, after a
Mm-hmm.
while, it's a little bit jarring. And so I realized that I was sensitive. I was very sensitive. And I realized I treat everybody as if they carry that similar sensitivity. And I knew that I would bloom a little more just with that. Here's what you did well, and here's what you could work on. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that approach felt more empowering for my students as well, which was beautiful to see.
Yeah. And you're never too old, I guess, to have singing lessons if you just want to have a bit of fun and discover a little bit more what your voice can actually do. Because it's amazing what it not just does to your confidence, but also to your body. What
Yes.
happens, the things that happen when you start to learn proper breathing, and it's that's some stuff kind of not freaked me out, but was like, oh, can my body actually do that? That's kind of weird. I never knew that.
That's
So,
great. And I really
you
believe
know,
what you said, that we can take on something new to learn at any age, and it's important
mm,
to do that. Just
yeah.
like learning something new, beginner's mind. And I had students, from age 12 to sometimes in their 70s, and so people would come in and say, I'm not sure if I still have a singing voice. And within 3 lessons, I almost always would hear their voice becoming restored again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like singing and mindfulness are connected. Oftentimes in a lesson, people are brought right into the present moment. They're brought into their breath.
Mm-hmm.
It's about tone and vibration and just really being there and noticing sensations in the body. And then
Mm-hmm.
if you happen to get to sing a song, I just think that's the joyful part, where
Mm.
it's about self-expression and
Yeah,
connecting with the lyrics. And that can just be really liberating for people.
absolutely. And when you realize that you can actually sing a song that you never thought you could sing, and you love the song as well, I think that's just, I think, kind of almost gets you into a state of maybe ecstasy almost. It's really uplifting. It's just so amazing when you sort of think, was that me? Did
That's
I just
right.
do that? Bloody hell, that was me. And then you go and do fist pumps and whatever else you want to
That's
do.
right. That's right. You got to celebrate those triumphs. Yeah, and
Yeah,
just the joy of it.
exactly. Yes, beautiful. Now, with your retreats and workshops, how did you come up with that? And what's, I mean, I sort of figure, or I can guess almost what your intentions are with it, but could you explain a little bit what's going on in your workshops and what the ideal outcome is that you want people to walk away with?
So the primary offering, my primary workshop offering, which also is an online class and sometimes an in-person class, it is freeing your voice. And I also separately lead some meditation and song workshops too, but freeing your voice is the primary offering. And it is kind of like a group voice lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I do introduce songs, but we take time to really zero in on breathing practices that help us to be able to increase singing stamina and vocal health. So it is like a group lesson, and I have everybody breathing together and really hooking into good breath support and keeping their voice healthy. And then I teach songs, and oftentimes the songs have overlapping harmony parts, and
Mm-hmm.
people can pick a part and hold it. And then when I'm teaching online, I have a looper. So I can actually sing the melody and then hit a button and do the harmony part, and people can practice either one. And
Okay.
then usually I'll do up to 3-part harmonies. And
Mm-hmm.
then the idea is that if you're online wherever you live, one day you can come do the Freeing Your Voice retreat and you'll already know some of the songs. It's not necessary, but it's sort of joyful to have learned them online, but then have an opportunity to come together in person.
Mm.
So the retreat version of Freeing Your Voice, I still give that kind of voice lesson section, but
Mm-hmm.
I actually break it open quite a bit. And in the retreat, I do some guided meditations. Of course, there are songs, restorative movement. I do writing exercises that help us to become aware of where our inner blocks are, restricting our voices or restricting our joy. I just finished leading a retreat, and I asked people to write about what brings them joy and what restricts their joy, what gets in the way of their joy. And then they discuss it in small groups and can relate with one another. Oh, I always distract myself and end up on the internet longer than I should be instead of doing that singing that I love or whatever. The gardening, I'd rather be gardening, but I keep getting stuck on the phone with my sister-in-law, whatever it is. Just like
Yeah.
what is it that gets in your way? And actually when people realize that there's something they're doing often that's getting in the way, so we gently come to that and work with that. So I give some
Oh.
deeper exercises that help to free up where the blockages are.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do group discussion. And so it's very, there's art, drawing experiences
Wow.
too. Sometimes people need a break from singing so they can draw what what
Mm-hmm.
joy looks like to them. And so it's just really varied, but it's really creative expression based. And the
Mm.
singing part is joyful because we can do that all together. And the harmonies, there's something so
Mm-hmm.
deeply nourishing about singing in harmony together. And that's a big part of creating community and connection and joy.
Wow. And I mean, when I read obviously the title of your workshop, Freeing Your Voice, I guess I'm like many people who assume it's all about the singing, but like you just explained, it's not. There's so much more to it. And the singing part might just be from what I understand, and please correct me if I get this wrong, it can be the sort of almost the last bit, the freeing bit of all the exercises you've done. It's like you release it all and send it out and say bye bye to whatever's holding you back.
Yes, it singing really gets energy moving in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And in the retreats, I weave song throughout. So we have,
Right.
it's like it's
Mm-hmm.
throughout, but there's something about all the movement and then the self reflection and then the small groups. You might have just
Mm-hmm.
groups of 3 to talk about. That's always good for the introverts in the room to just do small group discussion
Yep.
and maybe discover something new because somebody in your group had an insight that really relates to you that you
Mm-hmm.
didn't see in yourself yet. So
Yeah.
there's something really powerful there. But I do think of the symbolism of freeing your voice. It could very literally mean freeing your singing voice. And that's one of the specialties of after teaching
Mm-hmm.
for 18 years one-on-one. That's something I can help unlock for people. But I found more often than not, a lot of those restrictions were psychological and they had to do
Mm.
with confidence
Yeah.
and they had to do with belief in oneself and they had to do with something that happened in somebody's childhood where a teacher told them they couldn't sing or they felt like they
Mm-hmm.
had to stay invisible to be safe or there's very deep things that happen that get in the way again of our liberation and joy. And so I do take it to that level in the retreat version.
Mm-hmm.
And also, sometimes writers sign up for that workshop. They might not even really consider themselves to gravitate to singing that much, but they want to free their writing block. Or artists come and
Yeah.
people from all walks of life and all professions. Many people enjoy
Mm.
singing, but they just don't fit it into their life. So it's a chance to tap into that too.
Hmm. That's so fascinating. And for me personally, not very surprising, obviously, that it's not just about your singing voice, but basically giving your, I don't know if the word permission slip to actually be yourself and use your voice in different ways too. And that's totally okay. So,
Permission is a great word. That's
yeah.
exactly what I think. What I think this person just needs permission, like in the most loving, graceful, supportive way. I just think
Yes.
they need permission and they can feel, just
Mm-hmm.
acceptance and encouragement. And that's the word.
Yeah. Yeah. I think permission is a big one generally in life. We always hold ourselves back so much because we think we need permission from something or someone.
Yes.
So yeah. And I know personally I probably still do it. You might still even do it yourself. We all do it sometimes without even realizing that we kind of wait for something to say yes, go for it, or no, don't do that.
That's right. And many of us have become very good at reading subtle body language.
Mm,
So we might start to speak up and quickly gauge the room. Is this appropriate right now? Are people responding? Oh no.
mm-hmm,
Okay. There's like this subtle thing that we've learned. And I do think it's linked to staying safe.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep,
There's
yep,
history there with if you speak up too much, what happens, or
yep.
so we've become, I think it's just human nature to gauge. And some people don't. Sometimes I admire people who are just bold and put their voice into the room. And
I know,
sometimes they take
right?
up too much space, though.
Yes. It's yeah, if you're able to sort of have a bit of that sense when it's right and when it's not, that'd be preferred.
Yes,
Absolutely.
for all, yes.
Right, like let's switch a little bit. I love your workshops and the retreat sounds really, really cool. Shame they're so far away.
Yes,
You've got to
I
come
do
over to us.
travel.
You got
Yeah,
to come over to Australia and do one.
I would be happy to. My husband has done a couple of book tours in Australia, so maybe next time we'll come together.
Yes, you should do. While he's promoting his books, you do a retreat.
Yeah,
Sounds good to
great.
me.
Deal. It's a deal.
That's the deal. Okay, now switching gears a little bit here. Not too much though. We're still staying with music, of course, but with your band, obviously you perform, you write songs. But when you feel like you just don't want to do any of that, you just want to chill, or you just want to, I don't know, do gardening or whatever you do for a hobby. What kind of music do you put on? What do you turn to?
Okay, good question. So this answer might be surprising, but I really like silence.
Oh, right.
And people are surprised. My spouse is surprised by that because he listens to a lot of music.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's like something about I'm so satiated with music in my work world or writing songs that oftentimes I just like silence. And I think it's almost like sometimes I just have to empty out. I'm full and I have to empty out the pot, like it's like just
Mm-hmm.
empty out. And silence is something I think some people are afraid of, that's it's like not normal to like enjoy silence, right? But there's something there for me. And I do like to walk in nature. And for many years, I didn't bring headphones or anything. I just, whatever sounds were around me, and I had my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But there does come a time, I will admit, when I'm like, okay, I need some inspiration. And I'll tell you what I listen to. So there are some songwriters that have really spoken to me over the years, and they tend to be people who write soulful songs, and also maybe there's a touch of like a spiritual message within them. And so one of my favorite artists is India Re.
Mm-hmm.
And so she has just a wide range of songs, but she has a song called I Am Light. And that basically the philosophy. I also mentioned I teach a course called Hidden Treasure, and it's a 3-year course in personal and spiritual growth. And her song, I Am Light, highlights the philosophy of our program. She talks about all the things you're not, like that you're not your stories, you're not your personal history, you're not your thoughts or your emotions. You who you are at the very core of your being is a radiant light. And that's the core philosophy of this other course that I teach. And so I listen to her music. And sometimes I have friends that give me suggestions. Oh, listen to this band or this singer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I have young children, so sometimes there's Disney musicals that I think at Hamilton, I remember watching Hamilton and taking in that music because it was really popular with my students. And then that inspired me. The next day after I saw it, I wrote a choral piece
Mm-hmm.
called Lift Each Other Higher. And it's a social justice song, but something about hearing the style of the music of Hamilton like inspired me to write a song a different way. And when I was young, I loved musicals. I was kind of that kid that was obsessed with musicals, but
Mm-hmm.
I'd say like rhythm and blues. I also really like 60s classics, like some of the Motown songs. I like to dance, and I like to dance to funk music, like just real, like, funk and soul. And I used to be in a band, a lead singer of a group that played that style of music with the saxophone section. And
Oh,
I had
cool.
played saxophone. So sometimes when I wasn't singing, I'd join them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the music that if I hear that music, also Latin music and African music, really inspire me to dance and move. And I've studied those styles, and I used to teach a lot about world music genres.
Okay.
So first I had to start with silence and honor that space. And
Mm-hmm.
then
Keep
once I
in.
have had my fill of that, those genres come up.
It's funny you mentioned that the silence bit because I noticed that whilst I love my music, I also need that silence just to do that, just to let go and just yeah, as you say, fill your glass or your cup back up. Because it seems like there's so much noise and sounds around us that sometimes all you want is just quiet, just or even lying in bed. We've got trees outside our bedroom window, and I just love lying there, and then you can hear the trees. I'm like, this is just so nice. I don't need anything else, so
That's right. Like nature
I
speaks,
can.
and yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
exactly. So it's probably hard for you to pick just like one song that really speaks to you, because I always ask if you would have to describe your life and or business by using a song, which one would that be? at this moment in time? Because I know it changes for a lot of people over time. So
Yeah, and I think that that song "I Am Light,"
mm-hmm.
India Ari, that would be the song. Again, it's she sings of that core philosophy of my work, and
Mm-hmm.
even in my daily meditation practice is acknowledging the light at the core of my own being, but also that's the philosophy I carry with everybody that I come into contact with, is that
Mm-hmm.
there's light no matter how people's behaviors might be or their moods might be. I just try to see who everybody is beneath those temporary fluctuations, and just to acknowledge in myself too, I have fluctuations, but my general practice is to acknowledge that steadiness, that light within, that flame that never goes out, that life spark, and to acknowledge that all beings carry that light within, and honoring people in that way. And so I really enjoy her song and the invitation to remember that part of who we are.
Yeah, that's it. I'm out of here. Bye.
That's it. That's it.
That's
We've
it.
done it.
We've done
Yeah, and you're wearing a lovely sweatshirt too. It looks like it's radiating some beautiful light off
Yes.
of it. Is it a heart? Or oh,
It's
okay.
it's
Ah, I love this. Yes, it's like
yeah,
a
it's
positive affirmation.
if we have any supernatural TV show fans here, they'll know what this is. It's a jumper designed by one of the main characters, the main actors in it. And I really love that message. And yeah, I just
I
bought one.
support it. Yay, good, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because as far as I know, and I don't know that much about obviously the real life people, because I don't dig that much into it. But I think that that particular actor, he did have mental health issues, and he really wants to bring home saying, you know, you're okay no matter what you're going through. So that's kind of the really simplified message of it. So supernatural fans, don't come after me if I got it wrong.
Yeah, yeah, that
Disclaimer.
seems pretty accurate. Yeah, it
Yeah.
seems really accurate. Yep.
So
And it's
yeah.
just, I think of like, you know, what you just described is like a layer. You know, I think of that at the core of our being, there is a radiant sun, but there's clouds
Mm-hmm.
that cover it, clouds of self-doubt or clouds of despair. And, you know, the clouds move eventually, but I do find
Mm.
that acknowledging who we are beneath it, or believing that there is a light beneath it, is
Mm.
really helpful.
Yes. Beautiful. I love this. I love the way we kind of come to the end of this conversation. And I think it's a really nice way to remind people and leave them after hearing this episode. So thank you so much for sharing everything. I think it's incredible and amazing what you do. So please keep it up and keep us all in the loop. You know, how you doing with everything? That'd be awesome.
Oh yes, absolutely. If people are interested in hearing a song, if you do sign up
Mm-hmm.
for my website, you get a free one of my favorite songs called "100 Ways" is a free music download that comes with that.
Oh,
And that's
fantastic.
elisamusic.com. So
Yeah,
you're welcome to stay in touch.
awesome. Well, I will put all that in the episode description so it's easy to find for everybody. Okay, well, that was a wonderful conversation. Really nice path we went down. I sort of imagined trees along the side. And anyway, I'm not going to go down that visionary thing that I've had in my mind. Otherwise, we'll be here for another 10 minutes, I think. Well, that's it, B-siders. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and got some really golden nuggets out of it. I always do. If you do, let us know. Get in touch with either of us or both of us at the same time. That'd be cool. And let us know what resonated with you. And yes, thanks so much for tuning in. And I will be with you guys again in the next episode. Until then, as I always say, keep on dancing and keep on rocking. And I'll talk to you very, very soon. Until then, you all take care.